Today, breaking news: the war in Eastern Europe appears to be entering one of its most dangerous phases yet, as Russia's reported new war planning pushes Ukraine closer to a critical edge that could redefine the conflict. Fresh intelligence assessments, battlefield movements, and political signals are combining into a picture that feels heavier, darker, and more consequential than previous moments of escalation. This is not just another routine update from the front lines, because what is unfolding now suggests a shift in intent rather than a simple continuation of past strategies. Russia's actions point toward a recalibration of goals, timelines, and methods, raising alarms not only in Kiev but across Europe and beyond. At the heart of this new phase is the idea that Moscow may be preparing for a longer, more grinding confrontation designed to exhaust Ukraine economically, militarily, and psychologically. Instead of fast territorial grabs, the emphasis appears to be on pressure from multiple directions, sustained strikes, and relentless uncertainty. Ukrainian officials have warned that recent troop movements and logistical preparations indicate planning that goes beyond defensive posturing. Rail activity, fuel stockpiles, and coordinated drills hint at readiness for expanded operations, even if the exact timing remains unclear. The sense of urgency is growing because Russia's military leadership seems to be learning from earlier setbacks. Mistakes made in the early stages of the war have been studied, adapted, and potentially corrected, making any future push more calculated and potentially more effective. One of the most concerning elements is the renewed focus on infrastructure targeting. Energy grids, transport hubs, and communication networks are once again under intense threat, suggesting an attempt to weaken Ukraine's ability to sustain both civilian life and military coordination. This approach aims to blur the line between battlefield and home front, placing enormous pressure on ordinary citizens while forcing the Ukrainian government into constant crisis management. The goal appears to be wearing down resilience rather than achieving a single dramatic breakthrough. Military analysts note that Russia's industrial capacity has been increasingly oriented toward wartime output. Ammunition production, drone manufacturing, and missile stockpiles are reportedly being replenished at a pace that signals preparation for prolonged engagement. This matters because sustained firepower changes the rhythm of war. Instead of pauses that allow regrouping, Ukraine could face continuous pressure that limits recovery time and strains defensive systems. Another key factor is Russia's use of hybrid warfare tools. Cyber operations, information campaigns, and political influence efforts are reportedly being coordinated alongside military planning, creating a multi-layered strategy that extends far beyond the battlefield. These information operations aim to sow doubt, fear, and division, both within Ukraine and among its international supporters. The objective is to weaken unity and reduce the willingness of allies to continue long-term assistance. Ukraine, meanwhile, is facing difficult choices. With manpower stretched and resources finite, every strategic decision carries heavy consequences. Defending every inch of territory may no longer be feasible if the conflict shifts into a broader war of attrition. There is also growing concern about air defense saturation. Even advanced systems have limits, and repeated waves of missiles and drones could test those limits in ways that favor the attacker through sheer volume. This creates a dangerous scenario where critical targets may eventually slip through defenses, not because of technological failure but because of exhaustion. Such pressure could change the balance on the ground over time. Diplomatically, Russia's new posture sends a clear signal that it is not seeking a quick exit. Instead, it appears ready to endure economic pain and international isolation if it believes time is on its side. This calculation rests on the assumption that Western unity will weaken. Rising costs, political divisions, and shifting global priorities could all reduce the consistency of support Ukraine depends on. For Ukraine, the stakes could not be higher. The country's leadership must balance the need to reassure its population with the reality that the coming months may be harder than anything experienced so far. There is also the question of regional expansion. Any miscalculation could draw neighboring countries closer to direct involvement, either through security guarantees, border incidents, or defensive deployments that escalate tensions further. NATO's role becomes increasingly complex in this context. While direct involvement remains unlikely, the alliance must continuously adjust its posture to deter spillover without provoking uncontrolled escalation. Russia's messaging suggests it is keenly aware of these boundaries and may attempt to operate just below thresholds that would trigger a stronger collective response. This gray zone strategy adds another layer of unpredictability. Economic warfare is also part of the picture. Energy markets, trade routes, and global supply chains are all influenced by the conflict, and Russia's planning appears to account for these ripple effects. By leveraging its role as a major energy supplier and commodity producer, Moscow may aim to create indirect pressure on governments that support Ukraine, hoping economic discomfort translates into political hesitation. Ukraine's resilience so far has been remarkable, but resilience is not infinite. The psychological toll of constant alerts, infrastructure damage, and uncertainty weighs heavily on society over time. Civil defense systems, emergency services, and community networks are being stretched, and sustaining morale becomes as important as sustaining military capability. International support remains a critical lifeline. Military aid, financial assistance, and diplomatic backing all play roles in keeping Ukraine viable in the face of sustained pressure. However, delays or reductions in this support could have immediate and visible effects on the battlefield. Russia's planners are likely watching these dynamics closely, adjusting their own timelines accordingly. The concept of the brink is not just rhetorical, it reflects a real risk that a combination of military pressure, economic strain, and political fatigue could converge into a tipping point. Such a moment would not necessarily look like a single dramatic collapse. Instead, it might emerge gradually through local breakthroughs, resource shortages, or forced compromises. There is also the danger of escalation through misinterpretation. High-intensity environments increase the risk of accidents, false alarms, or rapid reactions that spiral beyond original intentions. Both sides operate under immense pressure, and in such conditions even small incidents can take on outsized significance. Russia's new war planning appears designed to exploit this tension. By keeping multiple options open and maintaining ambiguity, it forces Ukraine and its partners to prepare for worst-case scenarios at all times. This constant readiness is costly, draining resources and attention that could otherwise be focused on rebuilding and stabilization. From a strategic perspective, the coming phase may be less about dramatic advances and more about endurance. The side that can sustain pressure, manage resources, and maintain alliances may ultimately shape the outcome. For Ukraine, that means continuing to adapt, innovate, and seek every possible advantage, from technological solutions to diplomatic initiatives. For Russia, it means betting that patience and persistence will eventually yield results that swift force did not. The global implications are profound. The outcome of this phase will influence how future conflicts are fought and how international norms are enforced or ignored. Other nations are watching closely, drawing lessons about deterrence, alliance credibility, and the costs of prolonged warfare. As this situation develops, uncertainty remains the defining feature. Clear answers are scarce, and every new development adds another layer of complexity. What is clear is that the conflict has entered a moment where decisions made now will echo for years. The margin for error is shrinking, and the consequences of miscalculation are growing. Ukraine stands at a critical juncture, facing a strategy designed to test its limits from every angle. How it responds, and how the world responds alongside it, may determine whether the brink becomes a breaking point or a turning point. The coming days and weeks will be watched with intense scrutiny, not only for signs of military movement, but for signals of political will and international resolve. In this charged atmosphere, even silence can be meaningful. Every statement, delay, or deployment is interpreted as a clue to what comes next. Today, breaking news marks not just an update, but a warning that the trajectory of this war may be shifting again, with Ukraine caught in the center of a plan that seeks to redefine the conflict through endurance, pressure, and time. As events continue to unfold, the world waits, aware that history may be moving quietly but decisively toward another pivotal chapter.